Hey guys, I just wanted to make a real quick little informal video. We talk about tithing. If you were here this Sunday or the last few weeks, we've been talking about this 90-day tithe challenge, and I'm really excited about that. But I asked some of the staff and some other people to write down, like, what are some frequently asked questions? What are some things that you think about? So I just wanted to read some of these and kind of just answer some things that maybe you got some questions about. One, somebody asked, what is a tithe? The word tithe, it just means tenth. So in the Old Testament, the teaching was that you were to return a tenth of your income back to God. So that's the word tithe just means tenth. Another question: does a tithe have to be 10% of my income? Again, that's what the word tithe means. Really, that's a lot of us give, but if we're not giving 10%, we really, I don't know that you even call that a tithe, because a tithe is a tenth. This is a good question. These are all good questions, but one person says, do I have to tithe to the church, or do public donations or helping others count? So that's a really good question, because this person's asking, if I give somebody that's in need some money, does that count as tithing? In the Bible, in the book of Malachi, God is pretty clear, specific, that when you tithe, he says, bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, that there may be food in my house. And the teaching there, the understanding is that you're bringing the whole tithe into God's church, into the church. And so I would say that that is the teaching. And when you're helping others, one of my friend and a mentor, he says it this way. He says that we ought to tithe where we're fed and tip where we're led. So, God has called all of us to generosity, and we want to be generous people. Certainly that's part of it, helping others. But that would not be part of the tithe. The tithe is to come into God's house, the church. Another question: what does my tithe go to? What does it do? Another good question. A tithe, it does a lot of things. When it comes to the church, it is paying for the ministries that are taking place throughout the church. It's going out to support missionaries around the world. It's paying salaries. It's paying utilities. It's doing a lot of things. All the benevolence that we do in the community, good work that we're able to do, is because of the generosity. It's because of what God has provided to us through that. So that's what that's about. Somebody asked, do I tithe off of my gross or my net? That's another good one. I always say it this way. I say, which one do you want God to bless? Do you want him to bless your gross or your net? And I know that sometimes it's not as simple as that. It can be complicated. I say, listen, these are issues of the heart. These are heart issues, and really, these are personal things between you and the Lord. And I think if we're going to err on the side of something, I think we want to err on the side of being generous. And I believe that, and we see the promise of God that he will bless our giving. Another question: what does the New Testament say about tithing? In the Old Testament, in the book of Malachi, talks about bringing the tithe into the storehouse. Throughout the Old Testament, the tithe, it means tenth. In the New Testament, basically the teaching there is that we are to give as we've been prospered. So I guess I would ask that question of us: is how have we been prospered? And as the most prosperous nation on the face of the earth, as the wealthiest people who have ever lived in the history of humanity, I think the tithe, the tenth, is a great starting point. And beyond that, I think it's between you and the Lord. But New Testament teaching is we give as we've been prospered. And that may look different from person to person. But another question: should I tithe if I'm in debt? Easy answer to that is yes. I don't think that our debt, our choices, that we should use that as an excuse to say, there, God, I'm sorry, I can't give back to you. I'm going to rob God of what he's instructed me to give back because I've made some poor choices and I'm in debt. Listen, I say that yes, you should tithe even if you're in debt, because honestly, what you're going to learn through tithing, as we learn to be better stewards of what God gives us, it's going to help us unlearn some of the bad habits that got us into debt in the first place. Um, and I firmly believe that God, with God's help, I can do more on 90% of my income than I could do with 100% on my own. So I think that it's just that simple. Another question, what do blessings look like? So we talk about, God promises to bless us when we tithe. Again, the book of Malachi says you bring the whole tithe in the storehouse, and he said, see if I won't give you so many blessings, if I won't bless you so much that you won't have room enough to store it. You won't have enough room to store all the blessings that I want to pour out on your life. But it's not just financial stuff. Some people are under the impression that, okay, if I give to God, if I give 10% to God, then that means I'm going to hit the lottery next week, that means I'm going to get a big raise, next week or next month or whatever. And blessings aren't just financial. I mean, you look at your life, look at all the different aspects of your life that make up your life. Your family, your health, your kids, your friendships, your job, your career, but all those things, our emotions, our joy, all that kind of stuff. God promises to bless us, and I always think it's interesting as people start to be faithful in that area, they start to give, and then they all of a sudden they begin to see, man, it just seems like things at home are a lot better, and I feel a lot more joy and contentment in my life. I feel like I'm not struggling with things like I was before, and certainly there are financial blessings. I mean, I've heard stories, have experienced some myself, where once I started tithing, I found that God is true to His word, and when He says, if He's given you a little and trusts you with a little, then He'll put you in charge of more, and that is a real thing. But it's not about just the blessings. It's a heart issue. These are heart issues, and I want to make sure that we don't wade too much into legalism, or that we are focused on, okay, what do I get out of this? God's going to give me more money, so if I give Him 10%, then that means He's going to make me rich. That's not the motive that we want to go for. And when the Bible says that the Lord loves a cheerful giver, are we truly that? Are we cheerful givers? Or are we just saying, okay, I'm putting this in because then I know that God's going to give me more back out of it? I don't think that's being a cheerful giver. So anyway, it's a good question. Last one we got here is a good one. What if I don't agree with how the church spends money? That might be some people. You say, I don't like what the church did there. I would have wanted them to do this, or I've got this idea, and I think that comes down to control a little bit. And if we have the mentality or the thought that I'm going to give, but only if you do what I want you to do, that's controlling. I mean, that's basically telling God, okay, I'm going to give you back what you ask for, but only if it's used like this. That's not what the scripture says. It says that we're to give, to return to the Lord the tithe, and that's it. We're just returning it. I'm not in control of it anymore. I'm not. That's not our concern. The Bible's pretty clear. It says that when God says, how would a person rob God? But He says that you can rob God through tithes and offerings. And when we withhold that, and I've known people over the years that said, you know what, I don't like what the church is doing, or I don't like the preacher, what he said, and so therefore I'm not going to give my tithe. You're not really hurting the church, because God's going to take care of us one way or the other. Maybe you don't trust the person that God has put in charge, but I think we have to trust that God's in control, and that He's asked me to do this, and He has put people in positions of leadership for a purpose. And I think we have to trust that. So good questions. I appreciate that. Hey, maybe you've got another question that I didn't cover here. Would love to do part 2. If you've got a specific question that maybe I didn't cover, send us a email or a comment or something. We'd love to follow up with you. But man, just thank you. Thank you for your generosity. Thank you for going on this ride with us. I am just confident that God's going to bless your life and can't wait to hear your stories. And would love for you to share your story. There's a link on the webpage. If you've got a story to share, man, we would love to hear it. So I hope that we do. God bless you guys, and can't wait to see you soon.